The desert storm was merciless. Sand blew across the endless horizon, cutting through the air like blades. The heat of the day was fading into the cold of night, but the storm made the world feel alive with fury. Alira pulled her hood tighter. Around her face, her silver hair whipping in the wind. Her skin, blue as the deep seas of her homeworld, was covered in fine dust, but she kept moving. She had no choice. Her people had abandoned these ruins long ago. The desert was a dead place, filled only with bones of the past. But Alira had heard rumors that something still moved out here, something dangerous, something impossible. She had not believed it at first, but now the thought clung to her as tightly as her cloak. Her legs were weak from the long walk. The sandstorm made it hard to breathe, hard to see. Every step forward felt heavier, as if the desert itself wanted to bury her alive. She almost stumbled, but she caught herself and pushed forward. If she stopped, she would die here. She had seen too many skeletons half buried in the dunes to forget that truth. Then, through the storm, she saw it. A crack in the desert wall. At first it looked like nothing more than another ruin. But when she crawled closer, she found an opening, half hidden by drifting sand. A cave. She pressed herself inside, heart pounding. The howling storm fell silent. Behind her, the air here was cooler, calmer. Shadows stretched across the walls, broken by faint light from glowing crystals embedded in the stone. She pulled back her hood and let out a shaky breath. She had found shelter. For now, but she was not alone. A sound echoed from deeper inside the cave, a scrape of stone against stone. A footstep. Alira froze. She reached for the small dagger on her belt and held it close. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her body refused to move. Then a voice came from the shadows. A voice low and rough yet clear. "You should not be here." Alira's breath caught. The language was old, almost forgotten. But she recognized a tongue of the ancients. The human language. Her people had taught it in fragments, only as history. Humans were gone, destroyed by their own wars. No one alive spoke their words. And yet, here they were, spoken by someone hidden in the dark. Her hand trembled on the dagger. "Who are you?" She whispered. From the shadows stepped a figure. Tall, broad, wrapped in desert robes the color of ash. His hood was pulled low, but the flicker of a torch revealed his face. His skin was pale, not blue like hers. His eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the fire. Alira's heart nearly stopped. It was impossible. It could not be. A human. The figure studied her in silence. Then he crouched by a small fire made of scrap wood and waved her closer. "The storm is strong. If you stay out there, you will not survive." Alira did not move. She could not believe what she was seeing. Every story said humans had died out long ago. They had destroyed themselves in fire and war. She had grown up hearing that their ruins were cursed, their history a warning. Yet here, standing in the flesh, was the very being she had been told was extinct. Her voice cracked as she spoke. You are human." The man's expression did not change. He poked the fire with a stick, sparks dancing in the air. His answer came slowly, his voice heavy with something old and tired. "Not all of us." Alira sank to her knees, her thoughts spinning. She wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but her lips would not form the words. The human broke a piece of dried food from a small bundle and handed it to her. She hesitated, then reached out and took it. Her hands shook as she bit into it, the taste dry but filling. For the first time in hours, warmth began to return to her body. The storm outside roared louder, but inside the cave, there was silence. Only the crackle of fire and the sound of their breathing filled the air. Finally, she whispered, "They told us you were gone, that humans destroyed themselves, that nothing survived." The human lifted his head slowly. His eyes met hers, filled with both sorrow and fire. His words carried the weight of forgotten centuries. They were wrong. The firelight flickered against the rough stone walls, casting long shadows that seemed alive. Illyra sat close to the warmth, her dagger still hidden in her lap though. Her grip had softened. She could not take her eyes off the human. He moved slowly, every motion careful, as if he had learned to survive in silence. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The storm outside howled like a wild beast, rattling the walls of the cave, but inside there was only the quiet crackle of firewood. Illyra's thoughts raced. She had found the impossible. A living human. Finally she found her voice again. "How are you here?" "My people. They told us humans destroyed everything in the Great War, that you burned the skies, poisoned the ground, killed yourselves." The man's jaw tightened. His pale face looked older in the firelight, lines carved deep as if each one carried a story of pain. He stirred the fire with a piece of broken metal before speaking. "They are not wrong," he said at last. "The war came. It came from greed, fear, and pride. The world burned. Billions died. Cities turned to ash. Machines we built to protect. US turned against us when no one remained to guide them. The war never ended, it only swallowed us whole." Illyra shivered at his words. She had seen the ruins, broken towers standing like skeletons in the sand, but hearing it from his mouth made the past feel alive again. "Then, how did you survive?" she asked, her voice almost trembling. The man looked up, his eyes sharp as a blade. For the first time she saw something in them. Not just sorrow, strength. "Some of us learned to hide," he said. "Some went underground. Some fled to the far deserts where no machine would follow. We waited, we endured, we became shadows of what we once were. And we kept a promise." Illyra tilted her head. "A promise?" The man leaned back against the stone wall. The firelight painted his face in gold and shadow. "That no matter what happened, humanity would not disappear. We would not allow the universe to forget us. We would not allow the war to be the final word." She sat in silence, trying to understand. Her people had told her humans were dangerous, reckless, destroyers of worlds. But the man in front of her did not look like a monster. He looked tired, wounded, yet there was fire in his words that could not be ignored. "What do you want now?" she asked. His gaze locked on hers, steady and unshaking. "We want to live. That is all we ever wanted. To live free, without chains, without fear." Illyra lowered her eyes. Her own people lived under strict rule, controlled by fear of the old machines and the memory of human destruction. They never dared explore the ruins. They never dared question the stories. And yet, here was proof that those stories had been wrong. She whispered, "If my people learn you are alive, they will fear you. They will say the old war will return." The man's expression did not change, but his voice carried weight. "Then they will not be wrong to fear. Because the war never ended. It still breathes in the ruins. The machines still walk. The sky still remembers fire. I have fought them for years. I have buried my brothers in the sand. The storm you ran from tonight, it woke something." Illyra's eyes widened. "Woke something?" He nodded. "An old war machine. A sentinel. They lie buried beneath the dunes, waiting. The storm stirs them. It gives them power. You would not have lived long out there. They would have found you." Illyra's heart pounded. She remembered the strange shape she had seen before in the desert, broken metal that sometimes moved. At night, she had always thought they were dead relics. Now she knew better. You fight them alone?" she asked. The human gave a small, bitter smile. "Not alone. The desert itself fights with me. The storm covers my steps. The ruins hide me. But yes, humans are few now. We are scattered. Each one who falls leaves another to carry the fire." Illyra's chest tightened. She looked at him not as a monster from old stories, but as a survivor, a warrior holding onto a dying flame. Something inside her stirred, a mix of fear and awe. "Why tell me this?" she asked softly. The human leaned closer. His eyes glowed in the firelight, sharp and unyielding. "Because you found me, and because you are not like the others. If you came here, it means you were searching. Tell me, girl, what is it you are truly looking for in this desert?" Her lips parted, but the words caught in her throat. She had come here chasing whispers, a feeling deep inside that the world was not as empty as her people claimed. And now here she was, face to face with the proof. I was looking for truth," she whispered. The man's gaze did not waver. His voice was steady, almost a vow. "Then you have found it. And now you must decide what to do with it." The storm roared outside, louder than ever, but inside the cave, silence hung heavy between them. Alira felt the weight of his words pressing into her chest. Truth was dangerous. Truth could change everything, and she knew her life would never be the same. The storm outside began to fade, the howling wind turning into a softer whisper. Dust still swirled through the cave opening, but the air was calmer now. Alira pulled her cloak tighter as she sat near the fire. She could not stop thinking about what the human had said. Machines still lived beneath the sands. The war never ended. Humanity had endured. She looked at him carefully as he adjusted his weapons, a staff of metal with strange markings, a knife sharpened from old steel, and a small object strapped to his arm that glowed faintly with blue light. He moved like someone who had spent his entire life in danger. Every sound, every shadow, his eyes followed. Finally she asked, "What is your name?" The man hesitated for a moment, then said, "Kalen." His voice was steady, but something about the way he spoke told her it had been a long time since he had shared his name with anyone. Alira repeated it softly. "Kalen." The name felt heavy, like it carried the weight of many graves. Kalen's gaze turned toward the cave mouth. "The storm has passed. That means the desert will not stay quiet for long. We must move." She frowned. "Move? Where?" "There is a place where I keep supplies," he said. "Food, water, weapons. It is not safe here. If the sentinel woke, it will search." Alira's heart skipped. She remembered his words, machines buried in the sand, waiting for storms to give them life. She wanted to argue, to stay in the safety of the cave, but deep inside, she knew he was right. He handed her a small mask made of old leather and filters. "Wear this. The air will still burn your lungs out there." She took it with shaking hands, slipping it over her mouth and nose. The leather smelled of age, but it fit well enough. She followed Kalen as he doused the fire with sand and picked up his torch. When they stepped outside, the world looked strange. The storm had left the desert in ruins. Dunes shifted, bones and broken metal half buried beneath the sand. The sky was dim, the last light of day sinking into night. The silence was eerie. Kalen moved quickly, his steps silent, his body low. Alira tried to match his movements, but every crunch of sand beneath her feet sounded too loud. Her heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the desert watching them. Then, a sound. A deep, grinding noise, like stone tearing against stone. The ground beneath them trembled. Alira froze. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "It's here." Before she could ask what he meant, the sand in front of them exploded upward. A massive shape rose from the ground, glowing red through the dust. It was taller than a building, its body made of blackened steel, half broken, but alive. Its head turned slowly, glowing eyes sweeping the desert. A sentinel. Alira's breath caught in her throat. She had seen ruins like this buried in the dunes before, but never one that moved. Its steps shook the earth. Its chest glowed with strange light. The remains of an ancient power. Kalen grabbed her arm and pulled her down behind a jagged rock. His voice was low but fierce. "Stay quiet. Do not move unless I tell you." Elira pressed herself against the stone, her body trembling. The sentinel's footsteps drew closer, each one pounding through her bones. Its head turned, scanning the sands. For a moment, the glowing red light passed over their hiding place, and she thought her heart would stop. Kellen's hand tightened on the weapon strapped to his arm. He whispered, "If it finds us, we run. Do not look back." The machine paused, its head tilting as if it could sense them. Sparks crackled from its broken joints, but its strength was terrifying. Elira could barely breathe. Then, with a low groan, the sentinel turned away. Its heavy steps carried it deeper into the desert, its glowing eyes fading into the distance. Elira let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She looked at Kellen in disbelief. How can you fight something like that?" Kellen stood slowly, his face hard. "You don't fight it head-on. Not unless you want to die. You learn its patterns. You strike when it sleeps. You survive. That is how humans have always fought." His words carried a quiet pride, and for the first time, Elira understood why her people feared humans. They were not just strong, they were unyielding. Even when the world burned, they refused to disappear. As they moved again, Elira glanced back at the fading glow of the sentinel. Fear still gripped her, but something else stirred in her chest. Curiosity. "Kellen," she asked softly, "why do you stay here? Why not leave this world behind?" He did not look at her, only at the horizon where the stars began to appear. His answer was calm, but sharp like a blade. "Because this is still my home, and I will not let it belong to machines." Elira felt a shiver run down her spine. She had never met anyone who spoke with such certainty. Her people hid from the past. Kellen carried it on his shoulders, and though she did not want to admit it, part of her wanted to see the world through his eyes. The desert was quiet again, but the silence felt heavy. Elira walked close behind Kellen, still shaken by the sight of the sentinel. The ground seemed alive now, as if more of those ancient machines might rise at any moment. Kellen moved with steady steps, never rushing, but never slowing. He seemed to know the land, every dune, every shadow. She wondered how long he had lived like this, walking through ruins, hiding from storms, fighting machines that should have been dead centuries ago. After a long silence, she asked, "How many of you are left?" Kellen did not stop walking. His answer was short, "Not enough." She waited for more, but he did not speak. She wanted to know everything, how he had survived, if there were others like him, if the old human city still existed somewhere. But his silence told her those questions carried pain. The sky above them darkened into deep night. Stars glimmered, sharp and endless. She had never seen the stars so clearly. In her city, the air was always hazy, filled with dust. Out here, the heavens looked infinite. Kellen finally slowed near a ridge of stone. He climbed the rocks with practiced ease, and Elira followed, her hands slipping on the rough surface. At the top, she saw it. A hidden shelter built into the cliffside. It was not much. Only a doorway carved from broken metal and stone, half buried by sand. But when Kellen opened it, she was surprised. Inside was a narrow tunnel leading into a larger chamber. Old lights flickered faintly, powered by something she could not recognize. "This is where I keep what I need," he said, stepping inside. Elira followed, her eyes wide. The chamber was filled with relics. Weapons leaned against the walls, some strange and sharp, others built from scraps. Pieces of armor rested on a stone table, dented and worn. Maps drawn by hand covered the walls, lines of deserts, ruins, and marks where danger lurked. At the center of the room sat a machine. Smaller than the sentinel, broken, its chest open and wires spilling out. It looked like a body of steel. Lifeless but terrifying, Elira stepped back. You keep one of them here. Kalen crouched beside it, picking up a tool. I study them. To fight them, you must understand them. He pulled a glowing core from the machine's chest, holding it in his hand. The light pulsed like a heartbeat. This is what gives them strength. If you destroy it, they die. She stared at the core, uneasy. But what if it wakes up? He looked at her with calm eyes. It won't. I made sure of that. Elira walked slowly around the chamber, her fingers brushing against the maps on the wall. There were so many marks, so many places he had explored. She realized he had been fighting this war for years, maybe decades, completely alone. You fight for a dead world, she said softly. Kalen set the core down and stood. The world is not dead, not while I am still breathing. Not while humans are still breathing. His words made her chest tighten. There was no weakness in his voice. No doubt, she had never met anyone who spoke like that. Her people always looked backward, afraid of the past. Kalen carried the past with him, but instead of fear, he carried fire. She whispered, "You cannot win alone." For the first time, Kalen's face softened. He looked at her with something almost like sadness. "I know, but I cannot stop. To stop is to accept extinction. And I will not accept that." Elira lowered her gaze. She thought of her people, living in fear, refusing to believe humans could survive. If they knew about Kalen, they would call him a threat. They would try to kill him. And yet, standing in his shelter, surrounded by the proof of his fight, she felt something she had not felt before, hope that the silence was broken by a distant sound. A low, thunderous boom that shook the walls of the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "It has found us," Elira's breath caught. "The sentinel?" He grabbed a weapon from the wall, a long rifle patched together with metal and wires. They are never alone. One awakens, the others follow. She backed toward the door, her voice shaking. "But this place, it's hidden. Nothing is hidden forever," Kalen said firmly. He handed her a small blade, sharper and stronger than her own. "If you want to live, you'll fight." Her hands trembled as she took it. She had never fought anything more dangerous than wild beasts, and even then, only in desperation. The Kuvunta thought of facing machines built for war made her knees weak, but Kalen's eyes met hers. There was no fear in them, only certainty. "Stay close to me. Watch what I do. Survive." The sound outside grew louder. Grinding metal. Heavy steps shaking the earth. Elira gripped the blade tightly, her heart racing. She had come to the desert searching for truth. Now truth had found her. The ground shook as the sound of heavy metal footsteps drew closer. The walls of Kalen's shelter trembled with each impact. Elira gripped the blade he had given her, her palms slick with sweat. She had never been so close to death. Kalen moved quickly, his hands steady as he prepared. He checked the rifle, adjusted the wires, and pulled a fresh core from a pouch on his belt. The weapon hummed with power, faint light glowing along its barrel. "Stay behind me," he said firmly. Elira swallowed hard. "How many are there?" Kalen listened to the rumble outside. His face darkened. "At least 2, maybe 3, her heart pounded. "Can we fight that many?" He gave her a sharp look. "We don't have a choice." The entrance of the shelter shook as metal claws tore at the stone. A screeching sound filled the chamber, a sound that made Elira's bones ache. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then, with a crash, the wall split open, and light from glowing red eyes flooded the room. A sentinel forced its way inside. Its body was a mix of steel and rust, broken but alive. Its movements were slow, but powerful. Sparks jumped from its joints as it raised a massive arm, the end shaped into a blade. Kalen raised his rifle and fired. A blast of blue light struck the machine's chest, tearing through the metal. The sentinel staggered, screeching, but did not fall. Another step shook the ground. "Strike the core!" Kalen shouted. In the chest, That is its heart. Elira's body trembled, but she forced herself forward. The sentinel swung its blade arm, crashing into the wall and spraying shards of stone across the chamber. She ducked, her ears ringing, then ran toward its side. Kalen fired again, the blast burning through armor. Sparks burst from the wound, exposing the glowing heart of the machine. "Now!" he shouted. Elira raised the blade with both hands and drove it into the core. The metal resisted, but the blade cut deep. The sentinel let out a sound like a dying roar. Light flared then, faded. Its body collapsed with a thunderous crash, shaking the ground as it fell. Elira stumbled back, gasping for breath. Her arms ached, but the machine lay still, its glow gone. She had struck it down. There was no time to celebrate. Another roar shook the air, and a second sentinel tore through the outer wall. This one was larger, its body covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly. Its eyes burned bright red as it stepped into the chamber. Kalen cursed under his breath. He fired, the blast striking the sentinel's shoulder and tearing off a chunk of metal. But the machine did not slow. It swung a massive claw toward him. He dove aside, the claw smashing into the floor where he had stood. Elira's heart raced. She gripped her blade tighter, fear fighting against the spark of courage inside her. She had killed one. She could do it again. Kalen shouted, "Circle behind it. Distract it." She nodded, her legs moving before her mind could catch up. She sprinted around the edge of the chamber, her body shaking but her steps quick. The sentinel's eyes tracked her for a moment, giving Kalen the opening he needed. He fired again, hitting the chest. The machine staggered, light leaking from its wound. Elira lunged, raising her blade. But this time, the sentinel was faster. Its arm swung toward her, the blade cutting through the air. She barely managed to dive aside, the wind from the strike knocking her down. Kalen shouted her name. He fired again, striking the arm and sending sparks flying. "Get up, now!" She forced herself to her feet, her chest burning with fear and anger. She would not die here. She would not let Kalen fight alone. The sentinel turned back toward Kalen, its chest still glowing from the wound. Elira took her chance. She rushed forward, every muscle screaming, and drove the blade deep into the core. The machine roared, its body thrashing violently. Kalen fired again to weaken it further. Together, they struck the heart of the beast. With one final screech, the light faded from its eyes, and it collapsed into silence. Elira fell to her knees, panting, her hands trembling. Her blade was coated with glowing residue from the core. She stared at the fallen machine, hardly able to believe what she had done. Kalen approached, his face calm but his eyes burning with pride. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "You fought well." She looked up at him, still gasping. I thought I would die." "You lived," he said simply. "That is what matters." Before she could answer, a third sound shook the night. A deeper, heavier rumble, not like the others. Kellen's expression darkened as the wall shook once more. "That one," he said in a low voice, "is older, stronger." Elira's blood ran cold. She wanted to ask how they could survive another, but she saw the look in Kellen's eyes. He was not afraid. He was ready. She tightened her grip on the blade. Fear still lived inside her, but now it stood beside something else. Determination. For the first time, she understood why humans had not vanished. The earth trembled as the third sentinel awoke. The sound was different from the others, heavier, deeper, like thunder rolling through the ground. Elira gripped her blade so tightly her hands ached. Her chest rose and fell with quick breaths, fear fighting against the fire that had begun to grow inside her. Kalen stood tall, his rifle ready, his eyes fixed on the shattered wall. "This one is old," he said. "It remembers the war." Elira frowned. "Machines, remember?" He nodded once. The oldest ones carry echoes of the past. They were the commanders, stronger, smarter, harder to kill. The ground cracked as a massive shape pushed through the sand. The sentinel rose higher than the others, its body covered in ancient armor plates. Symbols glowed across its chest, the same symbols Illyra had seen on the maps in Kaelin's shelter. Its head turned slowly, and its burning red eyes locked on them. Illyra's knees weakened. "How can we fight that?" Kaelin's voice was calm, steady. "Together." A sentinel stepped forward, each stride shaking the chamber. With a roar of grinding metal, it raised both arms, each ending in heavy blades. Sparks burst from its joints, the sound so loud Illyra's ears rang. Kaelin fired first. The blue blast struck the sentinel's shoulder, tearing away a piece of armor, but the machine did not slow. It swung its massive arm, slamming the floor, and sending a shockwave through the chamber. Illyra stumbled, falling to her knees. "Move!" Kaelin shouted. He dove aside as the second arm smashed down where he had stood. Dust filled the air. Illyra forced herself to stand, her blade glowing faintly with the energy it had absorbed from the last sentinel. She circled to the side, just as Kaelin had taught her. The sentinel's eyes tracked him, not her. Kaelin fired again, striking its chest. The shot left a scorch mark, but did not pierce deep enough. "Its core is buried," he shouted. "We must break through the armor first." Illyra's heart raced. She ran toward the machine's side and slashed with her blade. Sparks flew as she cut a shallow mark into its leg. The machine staggered, its attention snapping toward her. Kaelin shouted, drawing its eyes back to him. He fired another blast, striking the wound she had made. The armor cracked wider. The sentinel roared, swinging both arms in rage. One strike hit the wall, sending rocks tumbling. Another strike cut through the floor, opening a jagged hole. The whole shelter trembled as if it would collapse. "We can't fight it here," Illyra cried. Kaelin nodded. "Into the desert. Make it follow." Together, they ran toward the opening. The sentinel roared and crashed after them, its massive steps shaking the ground. Sand and stone exploded as it broke through the shelter wall. The night sky stood above them, stars burning bright. The desert wind whipped around them as they sprinted across the dunes. Behind them, the sentinel followed, each step heavy, enough to leave craters in the sand. Kaelin fired as he ran, blasts striking the machine's chest, weakening its armor. Illyra darted around the side, slashing with her blade, carving lines into its legs. Bit by bit, they broke through. Finally, Kaelin's blast tore open a gap in its chest, and for a moment, the glowing core was exposed. "Now!" he shouted. Illyra ran with everything she had left. Her legs burned, her lungs screamed, but she leapt toward the opening and drove her blade into the core. Sparks exploded, the light flaring bright. The sentinel roared, staggering wildly. Kaelin fired again, striking the blade and driving it deeper. The core cracked, its glow flickering. With one final scream of tearing metal, the machine collapsed, crashing into the sand with a force that shook the desert. Silence fell. Illyra dropped to her knees, gasping for air. Her arms trembled, her whole body weak. She stared at the fallen giant, its red eyes now dark. She had never thought she would survive such a battle. Kaelin walked to her side, his steps steady despite his exhaustion. He pulled her to her feet. "You fought like one of us," he said quietly. She looked at him, her silver hair glowing faintly under the starlight. "One of you?" He nodded. "Humanity survived not because we were the strongest, but because we never gave up. Tonight, neither did you." Illyra's chest tightened. She thought of her people, hiding in fear, believing the world was empty of humans. If they knew the truth, everything would change. She whispered, "I should tell them." Kaelin's eyes were sharp. "Tell them carefully. The truth is heavy. Some will fear it, some will fight it. But if even one of them believes, then humanity's fire will spread again. She looked out over the desert. The dunes stretched endless, but for the first time, they did not seem empty. Somewhere beneath the sands, more machines still slept. But somewhere above them, under the stars, life still fought. Alira tightened her grip on the blade. Then, I will fight too. Kaylin gave a small smile, the first she had seen. Good, then humanity is not alone. The wind carried the last of the storm away, leaving only the quiet breath of the desert. Together, human and alien stood side by side. Their shadows long beneath the stars. The war was not over. But neither was hope.